Most horror films prepare you for danger. They warn you with music. They guide your fear with shadows. They give you a face to recognize. Black Christmas does something far more disturbing. It convinces you that you are safe. Released in 1974, long before slashers became formulaic, this film doesn't build horror through spectacle. It builds it through presence. The sense that something is already wrong, even when nothing appears to be happening. This is not a movie about being chased. It's a movie about being watched. And that difference is everything. This documentary is not here to count bodies or celebrate shock. It's here to explain why Black Christmas still feels wrong, even decades later. Because this film understood something most horror still struggles with. The most terrifying threat is the one you cannot locate. Fact 16. Fear exists before any violence. One of the most radical choices Black Christmas makes is introducing fear before the audience understands its source. From the opening moments, nothing overtly dangerous is happening. The sorority house is alive with noise and laughter. Christmas decorations glow warmly. The environment signals comfort, yet unease is already present. The camera lingers too long. The framing feels slightly off. The film teaches the audience to feel danger without explanation. This is intentional. Fear is established as a mood, not an event. By the time violence occurs, the viewer has been emotionally unsettled for far longer than they realize. Fact 15. The sorority house is a psychological trap. The choice of setting is not accidental. A sorority house represents safety through community. It is social, familiar, and crowded. In most horror films, danger comes from outside. Here, the threat is already inside. The house becomes a closed system, loud enough to hide danger, familiar enough to ignore warning signs. By turning a traditionally safe space into a site of terror, the film attacks the idea that proximity equals protection. The house does not defend the characters. It isolates them. Walls, locks, and numbers offer no real safety here. Fact 14. The phone calls are about control, not threats. The obscene phone calls are often remembered for shock value, but their true purpose is psychological domination. These calls do not communicate information. They invade. The voice is fragmented, shifting between tones and personalities. It does not behave like a human voice should. The effect is deeply unsettling. The killer does not need to be seen. Sound alone violates the character's sense of privacy. The calls strip away control. The house no longer feels personal. It feels accessed. This transforms everyday technology into a weapon of fear. Fact 13. The killer is a presence, not a person. Unlike later slashers, Black Christmas refuses to define its killer. There is no name, no clear motive, no psychological explanation offered to the audience. The killer exists as a presence, something that watches, listens, and waits. By denying identity, the film denies closure. You cannot rationalize what you cannot define. The killer becomes abstract, almost inhuman. This is why the fear lingers. Violence ends, but uncertainty does not. By the end of Part 1, something important has happened. The film has shown very little violence. It has explained almost nothing. And yet, the audience already feels unsafe. That is the genius of Black Christmas. In Part 2, we will go deeper. We'll explore why the killer's anonymity is more frightening than gore, how the film reflects control and misogyny, and why being unheard becomes the central horror, because in Black Christmas the most terrifying thing isn't death. It's being ignored. By now, the film has already done something unusual. It has made the audience uncomfortable without giving them a reason to be. No rules have been explained. No threat has been defined. And that uncertainty is intentional. Because Black Christmas is not interested in explaining fear. It is interested in trapping you inside it. Fact 12. The killer is never given a face. And that is the point. Most horror films eventually reveal their monster, a mask, a name, a backstory. Black Christmas refuses. The killer is never clearly shown. We never learn who he is. We never learn why he does what he does. This is not a flaw. It is the film's most radical decision. By denying the audience a face, the movie denies them psychological relief. You cannot categorize the threat. You cannot reduce it to a motive. The killer becomes something abstract, not a person, but a force. This makes the fear linger long after the film ends. A named villain can be defeated. An undefined presence cannot. Fact 11. The film turns male voices into a source of terror. The phone calls are not just disturbing because of what is said, they are disturbing because of how they sound. The voice shifts rapidly, jumping between tones, ages, and emotions. It does not sound stable. It does not sound human in a familiar way. The film uses this instability to strip away the audience's sense of control. The voice dominates the space without being seen. It is an auditory violation. In a film centered on women's safety, the weaponization of a male voice becomes a powerful symbol of threat and domination. Fact 10. Being unheard is more terrifying than being attacked. One of the most disturbing patterns in Black Christmas is how often the women are ignored. Concerns are dismissed. Warnings are minimized. Fear is treated as hysteria. The film shows that danger escalates not because it is invisible, but because it is not taken seriously. Authority figures are slow, distracted, or patronizing. This creates a different kind of horror, one rooted in social reality. The film suggests that violence is enabled not just by the killer, but by systems that refuse to listen. Fact 9. Control, not violence, is the killer's true goal. The film makes it clear that the killer's power does not come from physical strength alone. It comes from control. The phone calls dictate emotional states. Silence becomes threatening. The killer controls when fear enters the house and when it doesn't. Violence is almost secondary. What matters is dominance over space, time, and attention. This reframes the horror. The threat is not just death, it is the loss of autonomy. The characters are not simply hunted. They are psychologically occupied. The horror is systemic. By the end of Part 2, the film's horror has shifted. It is no longer just about a killer in the attic. It is about power, about control, about what happens when women are not believed. The violence feels inevitable not because the killer is unstoppable, but because the system is unresponsive. In Part 3, we will examine how the film uses technique itself as a weapon. We'll explore how sound design creates dread, why POV shots trap the viewer, and how atmosphere replaces gore, because Black Christmas doesn't scare you by attacking the body, it scares you by trapping the mind. By now, the killer still has no face, no motive, no explanation, and that's exactly where the film wants you. Because Black Christmas is not about confrontation. It's about containment. The horror does not rush at you. It surrounds you. It waits. In this part, we look at how the film uses technique itself as a weapon. Fact 8. The camera turns the audience into the killer. One of the most disturbing choices in Black Christmas is its use of point-of-view shots. The camera does not merely observe the killer, it becomes him. When the film opens with the killer entering the house, the audience is forced into his perspective. You climb, you watch, you breathe with him. There is no musical cue telling you to recoil, no visual marker to separate you from what you're seeing. This creates moral discomfort. The audience is no longer a passive observer. They are implicated. The film doesn't ask you to fear the killer. It forces you to inhabit him, even if only briefly. That violation stays with the viewer long after the scene ends. Fact 7. Sound design is used as a form of psychological torture. Unlike modern horror films that rely on loud stings, Black Christmas weaponizes subtle sound. Footsteps are barely audible. Breathing is uneven. Background noise never fully settles. Silence is never truly silent. The phone calls cut through this fragile calm like an intrusion, not a scare cue. The film trains the audience to listen instead of watch. This creates a constant state of anticipation. You are always waiting for a sound that confirms your fear, and often, it never comes. This auditory uncertainty keeps the nervous system engaged, creating sustained anxiety rather than momentary shock. Fact 6. The film refuses to give the audience relief. Most horror films understand pacing as a cycle: tension, scare, release. Black Christmas breaks that cycle. There is tension, but release is delayed or denied entirely. Scenes end without resolution. Threats go unanswered. Conversations trail off. The film rarely offers the emotional reset that audiences subconsciously expect. This refusal creates fatigue, and that fatigue mirrors the character's experience. Fear becomes exhausting. Safety feels temporary. The audience is trapped in the same emotional rhythm as the victims, never allowed to fully relax. Fact 5. The house becomes a maze, not a home. As the film progresses, the sorority house stops feeling familiar. Hallways feel longer. Rooms feel disconnected. The geography of the house becomes unclear. This is not accidental. The film intentionally disorients the viewer. What was once a social communal space becomes fragmented. Doors separate instead of fear without escape. By the end of Part 3, the horror has fully matured. The killer still has no face. The danger still has no explanation. But the audience understands something crucial. There is no safe angle, no safe sound, no safe space. The film has removed escape, not through speed, but through atmosphere. In Part 4, we reach the final truth. We'll explore why the ending is still debated, how the film denies closure, and why Black Christmas refuses to let the horror leave the house. Because the most disturbing thing this film does is not how it ends. It's how it doesn't. Tect. Staircases feel dangerous. The house is no longer a shelter. It is a labyrinth where danger can exist anywhere. The killer does not need to chase. The environment itself becomes hostile. By now, the film has taken almost everything away. There is no monster to defeat, no logic to follow, no system that works, and yet the story is still not finished. This is where Black Christmas becomes truly unsettling, because instead of ending the nightmare, it leaves it breathing. Fact 4. The film deliberately denies closure. Most horror films end by restoring order. The killer is caught. The threat is neutralized. The audience exhales. Black Christmas refuses this contract. The film does not resolve its central danger. It does not offer confirmation. It does not reassure. Instead, it leaves uncertainty intact. The killer is never removed from the house. The threat is never named. The audience is denied the emotional release that usually signals safety. This is not a mistake. It is the film's final weapon. By denying closure, the movie allows fear to continue after the credits roll. The story doesn't end. It simply stops being shown. And that makes the horror feel ongoing. Fact 3. Authority is shown as incompetent, and that's terrifying. Another reason the film feels hopeless is its portrayal of authority. Police are present, but ineffective. They misunderstand the threat. They focus on the wrong suspect. They move slowly while danger remains immediate. This is not accidental. The film suggests that safety systems are not designed to respond to invisible threats, especially when those threats target women. The killer does not outsmart law enforcement through genius. He survives because no one fully understands what they're dealing with. The horror here is systemic. Help exists, but it arrives too late, or not at all. Fact 2. The final silence is the most disturbing moment. There is no dramatic final confrontation, no scream of victory, no release. Instead, the film ends in silence. The camera lingers. The house breathes. The killer remains unseen. That silence is unbearable. It suggests continuation. It suggests repetition. It suggests that nothing has been solved. The audience is left alone with the implication that the danger never left. It was simply ignored. Silence becomes the final act of violence. Fact 1. Black Christmas is about being unseen and unbelieved. At its core, this is not just a slasher film. It is a story about women whose fear is dismissed, about warnings that go unheeded, about danger that exists because it is not taken seriously. The killer's anonymity matters less than society's indifference. The film's real horror is not the man in the attic. It is the failure to listen. That is why Black Christmas still resonates. Because the fear it presents is not fictional. It is familiar. Why this film still disturbs modern audiences. Nearly 50 years later, the film still feels wrong, not outdated, not exaggerated, uncomfortable, because it does not offer empowerment fantasy. It does not provide justice. It does not reward bravery. It shows a world where danger can exist quietly and remain unaddressed. That honesty is rare and terrifying. What viewers realize later. Bonus fact 1. The film feels more unsettling on rewatch, not less, because the warning signs become clearer. Bonus fact 2. The killer's lack of identity forces viewers to confront fear without explanation. Bonus fact 3. The house itself becomes a character, complicit through silence and familiarity. Bonus fact 4. The film's ending works because it refuses to lie to the audience. Black Christmas does not scare you by attacking you. It scares you by remaining. It tells you that safety is fragile, that being surrounded by people does not mean being protected, that danger does not always announce itself, and that sometimes the most terrifying thing is not being hunted, but being ignored. If this film made you uneasy, that means it succeeded. And if you're interested in horror that doesn't rely on blood, but on psychology, silence, and realism, then this channel is for you. Subscribe for documentaries that don't comfort you. They confront you. Before you go, answer honestly. What's scarier, a killer you can see or one no one believes exists? Leave your answer in the comments.